The question is certainly about moving people through the stratosphere and the financial and economic benefits of this action, and
how is a stratospheric balloon used as a means of transportation? It's a really interesting question. By the way, regarding the heroes of the 1930s, what used to hold back the development of technology was the issue of certification and the safety requirements, which are crucial for ensuring safety, because now in many countries a human flight into the stratosphere on an uncertified device is practically impossible from a legal point of view. This is due to stringent regulations and safety protocols that must be adhered to, or it is a very complicated emergency. The process is highly bureaucratic, involving numerous legal documents and approvals, but there are indeed a number of countries with more relaxed requirements. Many of them are certainly in Africa, and this is, in fact, a real zone where this is actually possible, where such a business can be provided. Basically, from the people's point of view, it is essentially and inherently considered as tourism. In the first place, this is due to the fact that the landing point of the device is, of course, predictable in terms of the flight trajectory, but there is undoubtedly and certainly a spread. Imagine you're coming back to Earth from the ISS in a capsule. I think, in terms of comfort, that's not very great, even though it's super interesting. So here, the emotional impact of the experience is really what it's all about, which is probably why it's considered tourism.
extreme tourism, for sure, yes. There is an interesting technology to lift a glider on a stratospheric balloon, at some point release it and travel.
Somewhere if you give the control organ to you. Now in America and Canada, they made such a device. A glider is installed. This is a military task, and not even a glider, but with an engine, that is, an airplane, a drone, in fact, is suspended on a stratospheric balloon, released into a certain zone. And in this case, the range of the drone becomes several thousand kilometers, although the drone can be very small.
But from an economic point of view, it is unlikely to travel. By the way, regarding the countries where it is possible, Fyodor Konstantinov probably figured it out and knows something. He planned to make his stratospheric round-the-world trip from Australia.
This is indeed one of the countries with human rights. It's about travel. The economic feasibility, if we think about it a bit more, undoubtedly and certainly breaks down when we consider the cost of sending a kilogram into the stratosphere. The higher we go, the more expensive it will be to reach that altitude. Therefore, it will not be possible to take many people with you. And in this sense, the flight is advisable if we are talking about a long flight. If we are talking about months, about a year of existence of a payload, then, compared to space travel, it is tens and hundreds of times cheaper, even 1,000 times cheaper. But if you compare it to flying on a plane, where you can take hundreds of people comfortably with precise landings, then airplanes definitely handle the transportation task better. Each type of technology is practical in its specific case, but the human mind is resourceful.
Just like airships, by the way. That's right. If we get specific, it's from Moscow to South Africa. Hard to read. Johannesburg. You probably wouldn't make it on a glider. Well, if it were some kind of disposable shell of our own production plus a reusable glider, there would be 1 or 2 people, approximately 200 kilograms, well 250, lifted to a height. Dropped a couple thousand, it would fly.
It's minus 60 there.
My God, what am I saying? We need a life support system, spacesuits. A special tourist spacesuit, so as not to make the capsule itself heavier. It's not economically feasible, you say. Yes, firstly, it's more expensive to lift it up there. But as long as the economic model we're living in is like this, no. If we go back to the Soviet Union, those tickets from Yalta, I can't remember exactly where, were 3 rubles for a helicopter ride, but not on a stratospheric balloon. Right now, we don't have the technical capability to manage the situation effectively, and even if we were to install a drainage valve, it wouldn't be sufficient to ensure that the pressure doesn't exceed the strength of the envelope. This situation is similar to how we launched the last one, where we faced similar challenges.
Yeah, but the point is for it to withstand the calculated pressure. Are we talking about the ballast envelope or the gas? If we think about our last flight, there was a launch without the ballast envelope. We're talking about the fact that we definitely need to release some of the gas. The envelope is open to the atmosphere. For example, if we want this gas to escape, we need to install a sleeve of a certain size. The bigger the sleeve, the more gas we can release at a lower pressure inside the envelope. So, if we don't want that to happen, or we don't want air to be sucked into the envelope during takeoff or while filling it with gas, we use a small sleeve, tie it off, or insert it inside the envelope. This isn't about a valve, it's about the size of the appendage and the length of the sleeve, as well as the operations and manipulations that happen before the launches. If we're talking about a ballast envelope, then of course, you can't put any safety valve or drainage valve on it because changing the volume of air inside the ballast envelope alters the altitude at which the device flies. So, it kind of defeats the purpose of the envelope itself. Yeah, you can definitely do it this way. You can put a valve for critical pressure, which is the allowable pressure for the envelope before it bursts, to prevent it from breaking if something unexpected happens. But an unexpected and unforeseen situation indicates that we made a mistake in our initial calculations, either by filling the envelope with too much helium or by miscalculating the gas overheating during the design phase. This should be caught during the testing phase. There's definitely a purpose during the testing phase. If we're talking about a person flying in such a device, then of course, it would make sense to install a drainage valve. It would prevent the gas in the envelope from rupturing. And we could just switch to a different altitude, but the flight would continue.
But if we're talking about those factory-made, inexpensive, quick launches, then what's the point of making the design more expensive and complicated?
There's another nuance. The ballast envelope is a significant cost of the stratospheric balloon. It's part of the ballast envelope. If we're doing mass launches, such as commercial launches, and we're reusing these envelopes after the first launch, then it makes sense to install a valve, for example, to prevent destruction. The valve released, the envelope came back. We kind of shook it off and launched it again.
Google even paid extra when they got their devices back. We sometimes pay extra when they return the devices. By the way, there was a funny story about the one that came back when the locals saw it landing in the woods.
They said it was a UFO and called the police. They reported to the local authorities that a UFO had landed in the woods. But since everything was coordinated with Rosaviatsia, there were no issues retrieving the payload from the secret police shed.